So today we're talking about the power of contrast, or the power of difficulties in our lives. So why would we want to talk about this? So often we can feel like, well, life's really hard sometimes. Sometimes we really wonder, like, is it me? Did I take a wrong turn? Is it because of my character that I attract all the wrong people, or I don't get the opportunities that I'd like? Like, what is it? Why is it that all my life is so hard? And then if it keeps on going, if it keeps on kind of depleting us and disempowering us, we can really end up despairing and really wondering, is there really any point of even being here? And the difficulties can really, really weigh us down. Like every single person here, I don't know if anyone couldn't relate to a time in their life now or another time that was really, really hard and really overwhelming, and so it's sometimes really hard to figure out how to understand them in a big picture, right? I always want to look at things in a big picture. Like, it's okay that if things are difficult, but there has to be a point, right? There has to be a reason. There has to be of some earthly good. It can't just be for tearing down my spirit or destroying my self-worth or making me feel like a loser. Like, those can't be the reasons. And yet, these are the weird voices in our heads that are like, if I can't do it, then, it must be because I'm no good, or, that person in my life, it's their fault because they're hurting me, they're bothering me, they're mean, they're a narcissist, they're an asshole, like they're, whoops, this is, it must be them, they're the problem. And so we end up in this weird dichotomy where maybe it's me and I get really depressed about me, or we have it all on that other person or that situation, that it's their fault. And because we put all the energy on them, we also have no power. Because every time we talk about it, we make it about that person. We make it about that they have all the power to control my happiness. So that's really the core of this talk is, what if it's not like that? What if it's not actually about that other person? What if it's not about my lack of character, or that I'm a loser somehow, or that I'm not lovable? What if that's not it? What if all the difficulties that come our way are meant to be part of our soul's path? And not like karma. I don't mean like you deserve this, it's on your soul's path. I don't mean that. I mean, they are meant as tools, almost like a book. We open the book up and we go, whoa, this is so upsetting. This is a really upsetting book, but I know I'm supposed to read it. This is really important for my soul's path, even though this is not the book I would have chosen. But there's something really important for me to dig deep about here. Imagine if we looked at all of our difficulties like that. Our situations, our past, everything, as simply these books we've had to open for some reason, because we have to learn something from them. One of the other challenges about difficulties is human beings naturally avoid pain, right? We naturally we don't want to be in pain. We naturally go towards joy. And that's important. It's important to go towards that which nourishes us and feeds us and is safe. Like, that's a very primal direction to go. But if we interpret every difficulty as something that we have to contract from, and we have to withdraw from, and we have to avoid, we avoid everything. We avoid the good and the bad. I told you guys, I told some of you guys a while ago that, when I was in university, I studied math, and so I had all these computer jobs as a programmer. And at one point, I was working for Toronto City Hall in their IT department, and I was like 21. I didn't know anything about anything. I maybe thought I knew a lot about a lot of things, but and uh, and one day my boss, like I was just a co-op student. I was not really a part of the community of the office. I was just one of those co-op students in the corner cubicle. And one day that my boss says, "Katrina, I want to take you out for lunch." And I thought, wow, this is terrifying. Like I was pretty shy and kind of afraid that I must be in trouble. And anyway, we go out for lunch. And I mean, this man had literally known me for maybe 3 months. And I was literally just a co-op student. I'd barely spoken to him. He wasn't who I had to deal with. He was kind of higher up on the food chain than I was. And he looks at me and he says, "You know what your problem is?" Which is what everybody wants to hear. He says, "Your problem is that all you want is to feel completely neutral." He says, you don't want to feel pain. You don't want to get angry. You don't want to take a risk. You don't want to do anything because you want to always maintain this calm all the time. I was like 21. Like I wasn't like, and he says, the problem with that is, he said, if you don't allow any lows in your life, you don't get any highs either. He said, life is meant to be like this, and but it was just one of those things that out of nowhere, these people just say these things to you, like completely out of context. Like he and I didn't have a relationship. We weren't even friends. We didn't have any connection. And out of nowhere, he tells me this. And to this day, 30 years later, I'm repeating it that, I'm supposed to be like this? And it reminds me of this story where, so my stepmom, she used to own restaurants, and at one point her son worked for her too, and they had to fire somebody. There was somebody who wasn't showing up for work, and they were having issues and all these things. It wasn't good, and they were going to have to fire this person. So, of course, my stepmother, she was like, well, I'll do it. I should do it because it's a hard thing. Who likes to have to fire people? It's one of the horrible parts of the job. But then her son said, no, I've got to do it, Mom. Like, if I'm going to do this, I have to be the one. And I remember afterwards, she told me, she said, one of the most important things as a business owner, and she told me this later when I owned my own business and had employees, she said, if you can't fire anybody, you'll never even enjoy your work. Like, it's so important to be able to fire people if they're not actually right for the job. Because if you can't fire anybody, like if you're avoiding the pain, you're avoiding the disappointment, you're avoiding being unpopular, you end up this weird milquetoasty life. And then all of a sudden your business isn't great because it's got all this dead weight in it that's actually damaging, the happiness of the people. It's not positive. And all of a sudden your whole business has this push-pull, people who want to be really good workers and people who don't, and all these kind of things, right? And I'll never forget that, like how much we would avoid firing people. And this could be people in our life. It could be people in work. It could be even thoughts in our own head that, I'm done with this thought process. Done. It has to end. But we have to be okay with things ending. And if we avoid the difficulties, we miss everything. We miss all the happy stuff too. We don't understand how amazing the good stuff is too. So reframing difficulties is a really, really important topic. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the old world versus the world where, so in the old world, difficulties are just bad luck. It must be you. You made a mistake. That person's a jerk. That person, I'm just unlucky, whatever, right? That's sort of the old world. And then we're going to talk about the new world where we see difficulties as stepping stones, things that empower us. So one of the challenges with the old the old way we see the world, is I'm sure you've heard of this idea of the victim triangle or the drama triangle, where when you tell a story, every single person in the story is one of three things. You're either a victim, you're the oppressor or the persecutor, or you're the savior. You're one of these three things, always. Every story is about, well, then this person did this to this person, and thank goodness this person showed up, right? And no matter what story we tell, we either are the savior or the victim. We very seldom paint ourselves as the persecutor. But the challenge with but you can hear this. If you ever hear people tell a story, right? You can hear this victim triangle. You can hear this drama triangle. And why is it called a drama triangle? Because this is so juicy, right? You can spin in this triangle forever and never, ever get anything done. You can literally never take a new action. You can never change anything because you've got the whole thing sewn up, right? So for example, if you're always the victim, right? Then that's you. And it's like, well, if it's not that person victimizing me, it's that person victimizing me, or it's that person victimizing me, or it's that person victimizing me. And there's a real, I can't not be a victim because otherwise I don't even know how I fit in the world. And this is a huge deal. Like it's a huge deal when we actually highly identify with the victim because we are completely disempowered. Like part of our character is a disempowered victim. And of course, so if you now have difficulties come into our lives, this is just one more thing that plays to my victim status. So even if I have to look at the difficulty and deal with it, it's like, and it's just one more thing I have to do. Like everything feeds that victim space, right? And what I'm going to say later is that the victim triangle is a construct. It's not real. Like it's 100% construct that keeps us stuck. So we never actually proceed on our soul's path. So that's where I'm going with this victim triangle thing, just so you know, because it's not real. Nobody is always a victim. Nobody. It's 100% a mental construct. Okay. So then imagine we paint ourselves as a savior, right? That's my job. That's what I do. I help people. I do this. I do that. You know what? And then, so what happens as soon as you paint yourself as a savior, and I mean, I literally have battled with the Messiah complex my whole life. Like I really get the savior complex thing. But then what happens is, how do I see the world? If I see myself as the savior, I see the world in terms of constant victims and oppressors. I have to help. And then everybody has to play one of these roles. But what if none of it's true? What if this is a construct that simply sells great movies? What if this is a construct that makes for great fairy tales? Or great kids shows where there's always the innocent victim, the evil stepmother, and the knight on the white horse. Like Walt Disney and all the fairy tales and all the movies, like all the movies, are all about this dynamic of the savior, the oppressor, the victim, the savior, the oppressor, the victim. So this is so in our head. Like this is so in our head that everything that happens, we actually see it through this lens. We see everything through this lens. All we need to know is who's the savior, who are the oppressors, and who are the victims. And the crappy thing about this is all it does is create war. All it does is create animosity. Nobody grows. Nobody. Because the other weird thing is, not only do we see it through this perspective, we make sure it's like that. So if even if something is healed, we just twist that triangle to find a new oppressor or find a new savior. And it's really twisted too, because if you, like, I remember I've told you guys the story of when I opened a dance studio years ago, and the man I opened it up with, he had issues, and I didn't see it coming. But anyway, what was really interesting is this is actually when I learned about this victim triangle. And he was so interesting because his great role in life was being the victim. This was his MO. Like, this is how he got people to buy him cigarettes and take him away, and like, because he had no money, because he had a gambling addiction. And so this was his way, because he would always paint himself as the victim, and people would kind of flock to him to help him out. And so because he had had so many oppressors in his life, initially he saw me as one of the saviors, right? So anyone in his life, he always paints as a savior. Oh, thank you so much. You have no idea what this means to me, that you've done this for me. Like, thank you so much. So of course we feel great. We like this juice, right? It's like, oh, he makes me feel so good. Like, he just makes me feel so important and loved and strong and everything, right? Like, it's like so much juice. Until one day you say no to him. Until one day he goes too far and you say, wait, we need to look at that. Oh, you too? Is everyone against me? And you will be thrown into the persecutor so fast. Because in his world, you are only a savior or a persecutor. There is no one else. And it was an amazing thing when I would watch this. Like, I could go from savior to persecutor in 5 seconds flat if I dared question him. And I remember watching it going, wow. Like, so like, the victim triangle is weird. And the problem is too, like, even if I play savior, like, I won't play savior, but if I do, it doesn't even matter. Even if you obliterate the oppressor, the victim will just go and find another oppressor anyway. Or they'll just start talking that, once that one's gone, they'll say, well, then there was this that happened. And then you heal that. And then it's like, oh, well, then there's this that happened. Because the triangle is solid. That's where they want to be. It's all they know, right? And so what's interesting about the victim triangle is it's of no earthly good. All it does is keep us stuck, and it's like when we're alive, we love to have the passion running through our bodies, right? We love to feel alive. We love to be angry. We love to be righteous. We love to be, and I don't mean this like in a sarcastic way or something. Like, I really mean it. Like, that is what it feels like to be alive, right? But because we aren't being creative with that energy, because we aren't growing with that energy, we need to feel it somehow. And this drama triangle satisfies the need. And we will literally waste our life playing in this passionate, because it's passionate, being oppressed, being the savior. But it's such a passionate story, and we're well trained for it. So we can get stuck there. I remember reading a book called Meditation Saved My Life. It was by a lama, a Rinpoche. I'm not sure who it was, Tukyam Rinpoche or something like that. And it was the story of how he was a lama in Tibet, and when the Chinese occupied Tibet and took them all and put them in jail, and they were tortured. And then there's a hospital in Manhattan specifically for victims of torture. And so he was brought to the States, And he went to this hospital, and he was having all these issues with his one leg as a result of this experience. And so the people were asking him questions about it, you must be so angry and all this kind of thing. And he was so interesting in his book because he said, I'd never heard people want me to tell a story as if I had been a victim of torture. To him, this idea, this victim triangle didn't exist. It wasn't a real thing. There are just people and things happen. But to him, the people who were in that prison who tortured him are the victims. And he said that. He said, I can't paint them. I can't feel angry towards them. He said, I am here in this hospital getting well and having a new experience. They're still back there trapped in their reality. How could I feel anything but compassion for them? Like, this idea of being an oppressor or being a victim was so foreign to him. It just didn't even make any sense. And that's interesting. It's a really interesting thing to reframe everything. So, for example, not having so then the question might become, there's no victim triangle. Are you saying that, if someone abuses you, you should just stay there? But this is the difference. If you were raised in a victim triangle for some reason, you'll actually feel on some level that this is normal, right? That being treated this way is normal, or being oppressed is normal, or not having a voice is normal, or being hurt is normal. Because for some reason, this is the story. This is the story we were raised in. But if you actually just simply look at the person that you're with and you realize this person has severe anger issues that causes damage to the people around them, I need to leave, right? You just leave. There's no triangle. There's no circling. You just see the situation and you make a choice. You make a different choice. Like, that's the difference. When we're in the triangle, we can't get out. We're perpetually just circling it. We're just stuck in it. But when we look at it and we say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's it. Like, it's a straight line. We just move, right? And it changes everything, right? So now instead imagine, so this is the world that we're deeply entrenched in, like deeply entrenched, right? So even, for example, imagine the cycle of abuse in the old world, right? So one person is abused by their parents, and then they go on in life, but all they know is they're not going to be the victim ever again. So what do? They become the oppressor, right? Like, it just continues generation to generation. Like, it doesn't end, because they can't just simply stop. They have to know that they're not the oppressor, so they're going to make sure that they strike first, kind of idea. Like, it's a vicious cycle until we get out of it. So now imagine we reframe the whole thing. And we imagine that I really am just a being here on earth having experiences. And imagine that everybody that I come in contact with also is just a being having an experience here on earth. So, and everybody here is just trying to figure it out. Like, none of us have been here very long, At least not that we're conscious of. So we're all learning. We're all trying to participate. We're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure out how to find joy. We're trying to figure out how to live, or what we're supposed to be doing here. Everybody. Even people we don't like. So now imagine we reframe everything. Like, even one of the great challenges in our life is finding resolution with our upbringing, right? What if our parents were abusive? What if our parents weren't there? What if they were negligent? Well, this is such a thing, and it's so easy as a child to internalize this. Like, what else would we do? It's our entire reality. It's our definition of us here on the planet. But as an adult, when we look back, imagine we tell the story without the drama triangle. We just tell the story. And we say, my mother struggled to be close to anyone. She pushed people away. My dad had issues with his family and he drank a lot. Whatever the story is. And that left us alone as kids, or that left us terrified as kids, or that left us bruised as kids. But there's something really different about retelling the story without the triangle. It allows everybody to make different choices. It allows people to just be people. For some people, they have to admit things like, my dad was a pedophile. Again, there's no triangle. You're not actually a part of it. You just happen to be born to that space, right? But when you just allow that, for some reason, my mom couldn't stand up to my dad, and that's it. It's not about us. That's them. Every soul has their path. Every soul is trying. Every soul is just being them. But we don't have these arrows attacking each other or saving each other. Everybody's just a person. Imagine we reframe relationships in terms of this soul space. And we say, yeah, my ex, he really just couldn't be close and he pushed people away and had a tough childhood himself. And, I was there for as long as it worked. And then after a time, I realized our paths had diverged. So we separated or whatever. Or I couldn't feel like I could leave. And then we ended up just having affairs on each other. And this is how it flowed, right? It's just it takes the whole drama out of it. It takes all the juice out of it. And so then all of a sudden you can just sort of identify it, speak it, and then you can take action, right? You can actually look at it because you're not caught in this passionate, blinding drunkenness of, passion is so, you can really get swept up in it and never ever get out of the way. Never ever. It's like one of those, what are those undertow things in the ocean? Riptides? You can get caught in it and it's really hard to get out of, And then even imagine reframing our own journey. Because a lot of times these oppressors and saviors exist in our own mind. We don't even need someone else to criticize us. We don't need someone else to beat us up because they're all living right here in our heads all the time, right? So imagine we retell our own story without any victim triangle within us, right? That it's not that I used to have this really negative self that I would just beat the crap out of myself, but then I started meditating, and we tell this story ourselves instead of just saying, yeah, there's been hard times, and today is different. It allows us to stay in this moment, and it changes everything. So Abraham's a collection of spirits channeled by Esther Hicks. And the way they describe difficulties is they call it contrast. That when something appears in our life that's difficult, it's just simply contrast that is showing us what we aren't. Right? That contrast may appear in the form of another human. It could be a partner. It could be a parent, it could be a child, it could be your boss, it could be anybody, it could be a neighbor. And they're difficult in some way, challenging, abusive, pain in the butt, whatever. But they are annoying. And Abraham Hicks would say, well, you can just sit there and go, you're annoying. You should back off. Like you can do this, which is just getting us stuck. But where does that go? It goes nowhere. They're just annoying. You're the one that's being victimized by having to listen to them or whatever. And then what? Everyone's been painted into their corners and now you're stuck there. So instead, so there's no movement, there's no growth, there's no expansion, there's no nothing with that. I now know that you are the bad guy and I'm the good guy, right? Or you're right and I'm a jerk, whatever. It doesn't matter which way we do it. But instead, if we just simply see this other person as contrast, and we understand that the reason I'm on this planet is because this soul is here to have experiences, right? This soul is here to learn something, expand into something, heal something. There's a purpose to it. Well, then all of a sudden, this contrast has appeared to make me say, that's not me. Whatever this is, that's not me, because it doesn't resonate with me. And that changes everything. When you sort of just look at someone and say, wow, that's, there are people in my life that I struggle to be around because for a lot of reasons, I don't like talking to them. They're stuck in triangles. They're stuck in these, vicious circles and they're just sort of drowning in it. And I'm not really good at talking about stuff like that. I just don't like it. But what's interesting is when they appear in my life and I kind of get stuck there, I look at me and I say, what is your problem, Katrina? Not what is your problem with this person, but why is this bothering you so much? Right? So then that contrast, that difficulty makes me go inside and say, whoa, I don't feel like I have the right to walk away. I don't feel, my politeness training says you have to stand here because that's what a good person would do. And you're not allowed to leave. And then as soon as I feel like I'm not allowed to leave, I'm angry now. Because why do I have to stand here? I don't want to be here. And then it forces me inside. And once I realize that, I can I can walk away. But that's a huge journey inside. That's a huge thing inside to go, wow, I needed to know that. And not just about this person, but about a million things. This wasn't about this person. They were just a catalyst for me to go inside and realize some slavery kind of bondage thing I had inside of me that said, no. If someone's talking to you, you have no choice but to stand there and listen. If someone asks you a question, you have no choice but to answer it, whether it's any of their business or not. This is really important. So there's no need to demonize the person, right? Do this. All that matters is like, wow, why does this bother me? And again, I'm not saying putting up with abuse or anything like that. It's the same thing. If someone is abusive to you, physically, sexually, emotionally, anything, right? The question isn't, can you believe this person? Can you believe that person said this? And they just keep saying, they're just this and this and this. And I often think of that when somebody says, oh, that person's husband, he's such a jerk. Bah, 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 bah. And I always, my first thought is never about the guy. My first thought is, I wonder why they stay. That guy's just the guy, right? It's not actually interesting. What's interesting is why they stay, right? And it would be the same thing for all of us. If we're in a relationship with anybody, partners, parents, children, friends, anybody, relatives, and it's abusive or mean, the only question we have to ask ourselves is, why I'm still sitting here. Maybe there's something I have to learn. I have to go inner, but not learn like by taking abuse. Learn by going inside, going, where does this come from? You know, it's, I had this weird experience once. I'm sure I've told some of you guys this before. And I was seeing somebody, and it was a really nice person, but for whatever reason, I would imagine what he was thinking about me, right? I would assume that he was judging me. I would assume that he was angry with me. And if he said something, I would just kind of take it for some reason. It was really, really weird. And then one day we were on the phone and he said something to me, and it made me so mad. And I hung the phone. I want to say I slammed the phone down. I didn't, because it was a cell phone. But I hung up and I I laid there and I was just fuming inside, like fuming inside. And then I stopped and I prayed and I asked, what is this? Why am I repeating this? What is this? And I suddenly had this vision of this king. And it's just a weird vision. So the guy, it kind of looked like a Monty Python king. It's just this long body. And then this dude up at the top. And I'm lying at the feet on his foot, all like curled up and naked. And they're just like, and they're just kind of just laying the crap at me or whatever. And I was like, what is this? And I realized no one gets to judge me any longer. Like whatever this vision was, it was an old memory of why I believed the opinions of other people were so important. And it was an old memory, and then it was gone. It was so wild. It was like I just exhaled, and it was over. So it's always interesting when we actually can look at the things in our lives and not take it personally, not allow this triangle to come in, and just see this other person, maybe even describe them. Like if you were studying this person as a psychologist, just describe them and say, oh, so this is their personality. And I just happen to be in the room. It's not personal at all. And I think one of the other challenges with this contrast idea is that I don't think we quite understand sometimes that we really are on a soul journey alone. Like this soul that comes in when we are born. We happen to be born to certain people. But it's just a soul coming through. And again, we have a lot of ideas in our heads that, oh, well, I can't have difficulties with this person because they're family or they're this or they're that. And it's like, there's something about, it sounds very detached. But really, it really just brings us back into our truth, that this is just my soul's path. And these really are just the players in my life. Maybe I don't understand it now, but maybe I will. And we don't have to keep everyone along. We don't have to keep the whole family and the whole neighborhood and the whole friends and the partners we don't have to. We can choose and we can create new families and we can do all kinds of wonderful things. We can actually use all this contrast to our soul's path and actually live the life that our soul wanted to live. Not this weird thing that just gets us stuck, in these triangles. And then we actually live and we create and we feel happy for whole different reasons than the passion of our drama triangle. How do you balance your passion so it doesn't take over? If you imagine what we're here to be as humans, Imagine as humans, we're actually meant to create. Like, what if we're really here as creators? We're meant to create music and art and writing and fun and sports and swimming and children and relationships and love. Like, what if that's what we're here to do? Then all the passion inside of us is so healthy. It's so healthy. Because it all just, like for me, when I'm in a creative mode, that passion is so overwhelming. I just, every day, I'm like, oh, there's just so much to do, and I'm so excited. It's when we believe it's all about other people. And again, I love people. I love love. I love sex. I love friends. I love my kids. I love people. But my passion stems from me out into the world. And I just happen to have great people around me. You know, what does passion look like outside of triangles? Creation. Like, imagine like every single one of us has something that we love to. It could be cooking. It couldn't have to be big cooking. It could be sitting in your moment right now going, oh, imagine the smell of freshly baked cookies right now. This is pure bliss. It's pure bliss right now. What if creation is, and even like, not that we're going to talk about sex, but, one of my students years ago, taking one of my online Tantra courses, he wrote me and he said, what if making love is literally making love energy in the world and sending that out? And outside of the sex part, what if that's just being with a friend, right? What if it's just hugging someone? What if every time we're loving, we send love energy out in the world? What if that's the whole point, right? What a great world that would be. It's hard to get out of the thought, this has been a difficult path. I can imagine a lot of easier paths I could have had. Why did I get this life? I know. But I'll tell you, like, I haven't had a difficult path in my life. I've had challenges and difficulties for sure. But I say that in comparison to some of my friends who really have had incredibly brutal, traumatic lives. And they are the most interesting, deep people. Like, I can't tell you how fascinating they are to have as friends, So I don't know why people are given such difficult assignments, but I think the why question is the dangerous part. It's just how you keep away from the triangle? Do I always have to have a role? No, that's just the whole thing. Like, the thing about the triangle is even if someone places you in a role, you don't have to accept it. That's just their version of reality. They might see you as savior, and you'll be like, actually, I'm just being me. They might see you as persecutor. And I mean, obviously, a little bit of conscience goes a long way here, that if I actually am hurting someone, then I need to stop. But if I'm just being perceived that way because I'm no longer playing the game or living up to their expectations or saying no or, something like that, well, that's just their perception. I don't have to have that perception. And I'll tell you, when you don't see the world through this triangle, you don't tend to see it in others either. Even if they try to place you there, they start to say something and you literally, and I'm not being sarcastic or weird, you actually literally are like, I have no idea where you're coming from. Like when that triangle gets dislodged out of your consciousness, you almost don't even see it when someone else is painting you in a particular light. My mom is now telling everyone that it's difficult to speak to me because I've settled some boundaries. Right? And that's okay. That's okay. That's her story. That's her life. That's her journey that she's got to sort out. And she's got to tell that story until it doesn't work anymore. You know what I mean? We all have to go all the way to the edge, right? We have to go all the way to the edge of something. And then it exhausts. And then we go on. So for now, you're kind of giving your mom a huge bonus, right? Because she gets to sort of focus that on you, because you're not the only one, right? Like you're just another player in her life doing this, right? And so she gets to sort of talk about you about it. And you can kind of go, well, glad I could help. And I know that sounds really pat or something, but it really is what's happening. There's this friendship I need to leave, but I don't know if leaving without giving an honest explanation the other person is genuinely honest or just self-gratifying. Part of me feels like by trying to explain my decision, I'm trying to control their perception of me. But I also feel bad thinking they may feel abandoned and that it may not be fair to them if I decide to leave without reason. I keep myself in that drama triangle and having a hard time moving on and letting go. How would you maneuver a situation like that? A friend of mine is in a relationship right now, like a romantic relationship. And for a while it was really great. And then something happened. One changed, the other one changed, people just changed. And now she's in this place where she's like, I feel like I need to end it, but I don't know what's ending because on some level, it's already ended. Like the actual relationship has already ended. But now there's this construct that says, oh no, but we're in a relationship, right? So we need to do something physically to end this physical construct. But the relationship itself has already left. It's already, we have this really weird thing between reality and the constructs that we've accepted. It's like many marriages are over long before the divorce happens, right? And so it's always interesting when a friendship also has to end, right? Or has ended. The ships have actually gone like this. And the danger is on the one hand, sometimes we want them to hear what we think. And then we have to ask ourselves, is that helpful to them? And on the other hand, to just simply know, I don't know, I don't really connect anymore. We don't seem to want to talk about the same things as, we just have really different perspectives. Like there is a way of saying it that's just, for some reason, we just don't seem to connect anymore. And so we always have to just be a little bit careful if we're trying to not stick it to them in the end, but sometimes we have unresolved feelings of pain or, I don't know, frustration or betrayal or something. That's where we have to be a little bit careful. And if they say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, then just you can explain it. And it could even be something like this victim thing. It's like, you're sort of stuck in this victim space. So it's hard to listen to because there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do to help. The story just keeps changing, but it's the same story. And I don't know what to do. So it is interesting to be able to say it in terms of what it is. What I meant about the dairy farm, for me, I was basically locked in my husband's life. None of my interests or goals are relevant. Yeah, well, the funny thing is the same thing. Like, if I told the story of my marriage, I could tell the story of the victim, Katrina, who moved to the farm and she had to leave herself in the city, and the in-laws who lived next door, and the husband who was whatever, and all the I could tell it that way, but it all served me too. Like, I wouldn't have stayed if it wasn't serving me also. So it's really, really important, when I really understood how much my soul needed to be on that farm, and even all the difficulties. Like I've mentioned before, that I can really live in the land of philosophy, spirituality. Like I can so easily live in my head and be such an idealist, like such an idealist. And that farm experience, as much as I could paint the story as a victim, and how hard it was, and how I lived with depression and despair, and it was so heartbreaking. I so needed it. My soul needed to actually be on the earth. I needed to be grounded. I needed to live. It's like being an idealist, right? And I had, when we became organic, for example, we transitioned the farm to organic. It was a dairy farm. I read everything I knew. I knew everything about the chemicals and the hormones in the animals and blah, blah, blah. Like, I learned everything. I became so extreme. I grew all my own food. Everything. Everything from the dairy to the meat to the eggs to the vegetables to everything. I grew everything. I ground my own flour for bread. I did. This is while I had young kids and foster kids and a dairy farm. So of course I burnt out, right? I get completely burned out. But I needed to. I needed to go all the way to the edge. I needed to go all the way to my edge before I went, whoa, oh, I know what this feels like now. And then all of a sudden I started to choose differently. Instead of choosing based on the ideals that my brain put together as some ideal life or some ideal choice or some ideal something, I started coming down into my heart, because of course it was right after that the breast lumps came and that huge crash came and Jim entered my life. But I needed to be that burned out. I needed to be that to the end of myself to really find myself. And if I had just sat there going, oh, Wayne did this to me and the in-laws this and the cow, like, to what end? So it's so powerful. It's so important when we get out of this. I want to be able to not see my relationships and others' stories through triangles. What's my number one tip to reprogram my thought patterns? I guess for me, I would probably journal, but that's me. And I would first tell the story in the triangle. I would name them. I would say, here are the characters of the story. The victim is, the oppressor is, the savior is. And then I would sort of tell the story within that triangle structure. And then I would ask to hear the story without the triangle. Imagine they're just three people. Or two people. And you just allow a different story to flow through. That's how I do it. Like, I have to actually clear my mind and allow a different story to appear, because I've obviously been telling this story in this way for perhaps 5 decades, right? So I need to actually be able to clear my mind and wait for a new story to appear. And maybe you need to go for a walk. Maybe you need to sit by the water. Maybe you need to meditate. But somehow to clear the slate so we can actually, how do I tell the story without the oppressor or the victim? What's your best advice for being truthful in a relationship, especially one that may turn from friend to romance? I would just slow down. I would slow down your speech. If you have a habit of, saying little white lies or saying things that make the other person feel better, to actually just slow down and breathe. And before you speak, always ask, is this the truth? Is this the truth? That's it. Is this the truth? But we need to slow down in order to stop and actually ask, instead of just doing that knee-jerk, saying whatever they want. And then it'll just become a habit. What if the other doesn't like our truth? Well, that's the beautiful thing, right? If someone doesn't like our truth, and again, we've done a lot of talks about truth. Like, truth isn't, here's what I think of you. Truth is just my reality, right? And if they don't like it, that's good to know, right? Because, if one person really wants to go to the opera and the other person really wants to go swimming, this is a really important thing to talk about, right? Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening. I will see you guys soon.